Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another special edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mashal St. Patrick Hewitt, and you know who's with me.
Yeah, Mashal Santoki here, and you know the stars have aligned, Mashal. We've been waiting to get this episode done for a year now. It's been much anticipated. We've had the fans asking us, when are we going to get this man on the show? And today is the day, Mash.
Yeah, I'm going to do a big intro for this one, you know. So people, I've been trying to get this guy on this podcast for so long that I even had to reach out to my dad to try and make some connections and do some maneuvers to try and make sure I could get this guy on. And I'm honored and I'm pleasured to finally secure the deal and get him on an episode. We were just talking backstage before we press record, and he was trying to tell us that he'd been on the show before, but I don't know where that came from. But it was our show. This is
before we get him on the screen, Mash. Shall we pull off some stats to put some respect on his name? Yeah.
Yeah, we got to put full respect on his career and on his name. Do you want me to bring him up first?
Yeah, go on then.
Let me bring him in, and Santoki, give him the intro with the flowers and the full respect.
Yeah. Good. So those of you viewing can see now who we have on screen. Just to give some stats and put some respect on his name. Last year, he was given the Order of Distinction by the Jamaican government for his contribution to sport. Former West Indies captain, 54 tests, 127 ODIs. And as of 2017, he's been with Cricket West Indies as a director of cricket. Welcome, Mr. Jimmy Adams. How are you doing, sir?
Not too bad. Welcome to. Thanks for the invitation. To both yourself and Mashal for having me here. It's great to be here, and yeah, it looks as if I wasn't on the show previously, so we've worked that one out. But it's good to finally make my debut on the program, and yeah, it's nice to be a part of it.
Well, Jimmy, you also have the distinction of Santoki and I often talk about who our favourite players were for West Indies cricket. And I don't know if I've ever told you, Jimmy, you're in my top 5, You're in my top 5 favourites of all time. I can't tell you what position in the top 5 you are, but you're in there.
You need a life, Michael. You need a life. You need a life.
Listen, Mashal, man, enough of that Jamaican bias, But listen, we always say on the show, we have hardcore West Indies fans who will follow Jimmy, your work, day in, day out, and we'll also have casual viewers. So do you just want to explain to everyone what your role is as director of cricket? What does it entail, and what sort of have you been doing for the past 5 years in that role?
Very simply, trying to get the organization to make the best possible cricket decisions possible. That's basically what the role is. Now, that covers the whole gamut of cricket that is played in the region. So you're talking about from grassroots right through to all the elite levels that we have, junior, senior, male and female. I think as time goes on, the role will become more specialized because it is covering quite a lot. But in a sense, just trying to make sure that whatever cricket decision we make as an organization is the best possible one. So, you can sort of leave it at that.
And you've had, so what we're talking, this is your 5th year, coming into your 6th year of doing the role. What do you, looking back, because I don't know how much time you get to look back and think what the achievements are, and I'm sure you're always looking at how to improve, but what do you look back on so far after 6 years in the role and say, you know what, we did really well to do X, whatever that may be?
I think there've been a few big projects that we've bitten our teeth into over the last few years that I've been involved. One is we've bitten in, and it's still ongoing, but the strides that we're making are really visible, certainly for me, and if we were to look at the metrics and so on, which is just general fitness levels across the Caribbean. That was, and still is, a real sort of key focus for us, because we don't believe, at the level that I sit at, we don't believe that we can ever compete with the best in the world. if certain pillars aren't addressed, one being fitness. The other one is the other pillar is improved coaching at all the different levels. Again, we believe that the generation that's probably ended with, I think maybe the generation after me, so maybe Wavell, Hines, Sarwan, and Chris Gale. You could argue that that was the last generation that might have had a club environment that could teach you the game in an acceptable period of time in the Caribbean. The days of our generation learning under international and national players who played club cricket. So from early teens, you were practicing 3 days a week, playing with them on weekends. So I learned under Jeffrey Dujan. I learned under Maurice Foster, playing with them, practicing with them, and they were world's best at the time. Because that environment doesn't exist in the Caribbean now for the most part, like most other countries, we now have to teach that formally, which was taught to us informally in the past. And that's a massive, massive challenge, because we still are fighting that mindset of the coach's role. And a lot of the challenge is re-educating mindsets that probably have never appreciated fully what the coach's role is. And if we believe that if we don't get that right, this turnaround could take too long, forever, because we are now having to teach formally what was taught informally for many years. And we've made huge strides. Firstly was to bring the right person in to oversee that department. We brought in a gentleman called Chris Brabazon from Western Australia. And the strength of Chris being in the role is he has done the whole kaleidoscope within Western Australia, working in the bush with kids, right through to having hands-on work with like a Justin Langer, who left Western Australia and went into the international arena as a top quality international coach. So having that role filled, and then through him beginning the long road, it's not going to be a short road, that long road of revamping coach education in the Caribbean and getting all the stakeholders to understand that this is a key pillar. If we don't get this right, it won't happen. So those have been two key areas that we have focused on, and we're seeing progress, tangible progress. And I think for myself, it is you have to keep reminding yourself every day that it's not going to happen yesterday. You know, a proper coach education program is 10, 15 years. You know, you will pick fruit along the way, but really that is the sort of timeline when you start to see a generation of coaches coming up who are producing world-class players. Not just on the back of that, but obviously playing their role in that happening. But it's moving forward, and I'm proud of the way the team have come together, this high performance team that we have now, and that are really pushing the whole high performance message. Because the other key project, and it's an ongoing one, is to move the franchises into a place where they can execute high performance programs, genuine high performance programs, in the same way that the counties in England or the states in Australia can actually deliver high performance to a certain level before handing over the best players from those systems to a national program. Again, if we do not get a response and a change and the sort of growth that we're looking for from the 6 territories, again, it won't happen. It has to happen. We don't have a choice. But we have the approach we have taken is to get a high performance team in place centrally at Cricket West Indies, and then using all these individuals know to start building out throughout the territories, and there's no sort of one approach per se, as in all the territories have different challenges, different cultures, etc., etc., etc. So there are certain things that we can put on a template and say, listen, this is what good looks like. But I think part of I wouldn't say that challenge is just something that's unique to West Indies cricket, is that we always have to be conscious of the individuality of the franchises, and we have to respect that, because the territories are different. People in England or overseas might not understand that, but I'm sure you all appreciate the fact that Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana are really different entities on a lot of different levels. So that adds to the challenge and the interesting nature of what we're doing. But again, with a high performance team in place, it took us about 2-3 years to get that team together. But we've had it together now just before COVID. COVID was a bit of a hiccup in one sense, but in another sense, it proved to us how many things were possible, even if we weren't seeing everybody face to face every day. And we worked through some really big challenges and came through it. So in a sense, coming out of COVID to a certain degree has built our confidence as a group. But we're now reaching out. Part of our role now is constantly interacting with the franchises to say, listen, how are we going to build out this aspect of high performance? If you look at fitness, if you look at personal development and lifestyle, if you look at coach education, if you look at your high performance programs themselves, if you look at your data analytics, how are we going to build out high performance in your franchise? And it is a challenge, but it's a challenge that we're up to. We have wanted this challenge for a while, and you know, it's one of the key pillars, is to build out these franchises, these territorial boards, to a level where they can deliver. They can take a 15 or 13 to 15-year-old and start him on a journey that will get him into international cricket in his early to mid 20s and put him in a position where he can answer questions that are asked of him at that level.
I mean, that's as comprehensive as it gets there, Jimmy. And you've raised a lot of things there. And I guess, firstly, the thing that goes through my mind when you were speaking was, obviously, you can't attempt to fix the myriad of issues that kind of are prevalent in West Indies cricket without identifying. I certainly get the sense there that there's been an identification of what needs to change, and now starts a long process of trying to effect that change. But before we kind of bring it into the here and the now, I'm intrigued, because at the top you spoke about how probably that early 2000 Gail Sarwan era of players were probably the last to learn the way that I guess you would say you learned as well. But using your career as a guide, so you debuted for West Indies around what, 91, 92, and left the scene around 2001-ish, I think.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is, in that 8-year, 9-year stretch, you would have seen enough to know when the system stopped working. Now, I guess what I'm asking is, did you see it as you were playing, or was it something that became apparent to you after you stopped playing, that the system wasn't equipped to, I guess for want of a better phrase, help's too strong, but wasn't best equipped to guide the next generation for the international level? Do you see where I'm getting at here?
Yeah, I saw it. I picked that up before I stopped playing, for sure, because I remember taking part in a debrief in the late 90s with the board and discussing the issue of where our players were when they were now coming into international cricket, and what they were what they were able to do versus what my generation and generations before were able to do when we arrived at international level. I think, however, that for many years there was denial in this area, and that sort of slowed up the process, because the administrators of the game in the Caribbean just weren't qualified to know. And I mean, at the time, yes, I might have been a little bit angry at the time, but when you get older and you reflect, people only know what they know, if you get what I'm saying. And it took a while for the penny to drop, which is a little bit of a shame, because if we'd started, take anything, if you started coach education, serious coach education, you had coaches, but coaches were seen as, they weren't viewed in a way that, or the coach's role wasn't seen for what it should have been at the time, and so it was time wasted, and the whole coaching thing became just a sort of administrative, exercise that was carried out for reasons that had nothing to do with the development of our best talent, to put it one way. But I would have picked up the signs, yes, before I stopped playing. I was playing with players in the late 90s who were getting selected into West Indies teams, and you knew that when I started, you couldn't come anywhere near a West Indies team. So the system, this had nothing to do with the player. It's just, I'm thinking to myself, this system here isn't working, right? It isn't working, and I was playing with these players at first class level, and then playing with them just before I left international level, and it's just like, whatever system is producing these players is different from what has produced me, Lara, Bishop, whoever, and then when I left the international game and started doing more and more coaching and coaching development in first world cricket countries, and you started to understand how they were going about producing players, formally, planned, structured, moving a player or a group from age 15 to 22, 23 into international cricket, and where the standards were, and you realized that there was a key component, which was the quality of the coaching and the coaching structure that was aligned to their playing structure. So you have two pyramids. You have your playing pyramid, but it's aligned to a coaching pyramid, because every level within the playing pyramid, so you want your 17-year-olds to be able to do at a minimum ABC. Okay, fine. You're going to have coaches who can teach that, so that your 17-year-olds can produce ABC, and your 19 and your under 23s, that kind of thing. So everybody had started to align their coaching pyramid to their player development pyramid. And they saw it as a non-negotiable, because we are producing, we're not waiting for something to fall out of a tree. We are going to produce an international player. In line, I guess, with most other sports, top sports in the world today. So it took us a while, but the signs were there even long before I stopped playing. The signs were there from I would say even the early 90s, even when I just started playing international cricket. I didn't see it then, but by the time I was leaving the international game, I could think back to signs that I would have seen even from the early 90s. Again, informally, how much of our cricket was learned overseas. And then okay, fine, not a bad thing if it is sustainable. But then those doors started to close in the 90s, and they got more and more restrictive to where we are today. The onus is now on every sporting body: produce your own. That's your responsibility. Produce your own, because that's what everybody else is doing. So that's a long-winded attempt to answer that question, Marshall. But yes, the signs were there from before I left.
No, most definitely. That was very thorough. Sorry, Santoki, come through.
I was going to say, this is a perfect time then to bring up the Emerging Players Academy, which the first intake will start next month, I believe. So
yes.
That's 30 players aged 19 and 25 from both the men's and women's.
Yeah, so 15 men. The women's program will start next year. I'll tell you why. Because we had to watch the regionals. These are the first regionals that we've had a chance to watch, that just finished on the weekend. So where we had a little bit more information on the men, we had very little information on the women in the last couple of years because there's been no cricket. So that is going to be pushed back until 2023. But we get the male cohort started next month, as you correctly said.
So in terms of the men, I'm assuming in terms of criteria, you'd be looking at players who performed in the last 2 under-19 World Cups. Would they form the majority of the cohort?
Yeah, we sort of capped the age at 25, although most of them are sort of 23 and under. And the starting point for us, the demographic for us was young cricketers who we feel obviously have talent, but who might have run into roadblocks within the franchises. Franchises only offer 15 contracts. Franchises who themselves might not have a minimum of resource to support these players at a high performance level, and players who the selectors feel, given this type of support, could actually knock on the door of international cricket sooner rather than later. So these were some of the criteria that we looked at. A lot of them would have probably played under 19 cricket going back maybe 4 or 5 years. But that was one of the criteria that was looked at. But we were really interested in players who we think there is something there, but right now, based on the situations in the territories, they can't move because there are only so many places available within that environment. And we also had to keep in it's like most things, Santoke, we would love to do it for 100 players, but we can't. So I just want to go off on a slight tangent to say that one of the critical aspects of what we are attempting to do is not just look at moving players from A to B. Like I alluded to before, if we're going to make it in this sport next generation or 2 or 3, the territorial boards have got to get to a certain level where they can support high performance, where they can develop their own elite players. So this project that we have is also geared at building capacity in the region in key areas that function under the high performance banner. So we're using, it is tied in very closely with coach education. It's tied in very closely with sports science and medicine. It's tied in very closely with sports psychology, because what we're trying to do, and at the same time, we are actually moving towards developing a high performance center, a world-class high performance center in Antigua. What we want to be able to do is to say to, among others, but certainly within the Caribbean, to the territorial boards, this is what good looks like. We're here to support you, right? But what we want to give you is a tangible view of what a high performance program looks like when it's functioning well. And if we can, in this period, start to build out capacity in coaching in sports science and medicine, your SNCs, your physios, your masseuses, your sports psychs, and your technical coaches, and get them going back into the territories, doing more and more work while we help the territories to plan elite level programs. We see that also as a huge benefit to the program. So it's not just moving a group of players from A to B. Yes, we want to do that. But critical, the sustainability side of it is how can we influence the territorial boards? Because I'll say it a million times, if we don't get them to a certain level, the project crashes.
I noticed in the academy as well, you're also going to focus on off the field things such as media engagements, financial management, personal development. Is this something you're hoping to formalize within franchises as well in terms of what they can teach their players?
Everything that we're doing here centrally is going to be, hopefully, is going to be mushroomed out across the region to all the territorial boards. So again, when you look at personal development and lifestyle management, we have been engaging the territorial boards on this for years with junior teams, but in a very, very limited capacity. We have sessions with some of these elite teams, if the franchise junior teams, squads, just prior to tournaments and so on and so forth. That isn't enough. What we want is for the franchise to be able to say, we have a department that deals with player lifestyle and development. And then we can say, okay, fine, let us help you with your resources. Let's work together to grow you so that you, through your department, can actually get better and better at supporting players in this area. So yes, we that is going to be a key component of what we're doing. But with the same outcome anticipated as anything else, can we build this out in the territorial boards as time goes on, showing them centrally what good looks like?
Jimmy, I think one of the questions we got, and forgive me for the person who watches this if I don't remember who said it, might have even been for our Facebook group. He said, was there ever a desire to start it younger? So what was the rationale behind 19 to 25 or ultimately 19 to 23 or whatever it ends up being? Is it because there's a belief that actually the programs aren't as quote unquote bad at a younger age? Or in fact, just actually, what was the rationale to start it at 19?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing is the logistics of that younger demographic, kids in school. That's the first thing, the kids in school, Also, the other thing to consider, Marshall, is just the fact that you have 3 levels of junior tournaments in the Caribbean. You have your 15s, your 17s, and your 19s. That in itself provides a certain structure for a youngster. Your average kid who is good enough and he comes into a Trinidad under 15 team. He would have played schools cricket, gotten notice, made a zonal team, done well. Then they select a squad for the West Indies tournament, whenever that is, and that structure gets him noticed. It's part of the whole regional talent ID approach. So he gets, but he's in that structure, and then he starts thinking of under 17s in a year or two, and from there, maybe under 19s and maybe a West Indies team to go to a World Cup, that kind of thing. But that structure is there. Going back to my time, I cannot tell you the numbers that we lose when they come out of that structure. So no school, the man of the house, having to find a job, having to see if your employers will give you time off to go and play. The hours that you used to spend in a structured cricket environment where you were supported because you're a schoolboy. Your parents weren't asking anything of you because you're in school. Cricket was part of school, so you played cricket. However, once a lot of these young men left that age group, you're in the big man's world with big man's issues, and we lost them. The employers wouldn't give them time off, so it was work, money, supporting a family, cricket, practicing 3 evenings a week from 4 o'clock, which means I'd have to leave work from 3, but work really finishes at 5. My employer says, I can't keep you in the role if you're talking about timelines like that, so I am just going to work. And player after player after player after player, better players than me. I tell you that now. Much better players than me. And so by, I don't know, at 21, I am playing for Jamaica. These guys they're holding down solid jobs, and that's it, career finished. They might play a little bit of club cricket on a weekend, if that. So that also comes into the equation, because that reality of life, that is when it kicks in post-19, when they leave school, when they're expected to contribute financially to families and all the rest of it, we lose them. So we're saying ourselves, we are going to attempt to try with 15, but again, I keep saying the ultimate goal is to get the franchises to get to the point where they can have their own 15 post-19. We will continue to build out the high performance programs below 90, and that is definitely part of it, through better coaching, better programs, education, that kind of thing. So we're not saying we're satisfied with what is happening at 15, 17, 19. No, that's not what we're saying. That has to be built out and improved as well. However, what we're saying is where we lose them completely forever is when they come out of youth cricket and real life kicks in. And that is the era. I mean, we've been agonizing for years. I'll tell you, I mean, it's not a secret. We've been agonizing for years. How can we find the resources to start either a franchise B or an under 23 regional that forces the territorial boards to have something in place for that demographic? It's just that without getting into the numbers, to run a tournament in the Caribbean where you fly people in and put them up in the hotels that we have for any extended period of time is the highest in the world. There's no other country where those costs compare. In England, you jump on a bus and you drive from Manchester to Derby. You know what I mean? It just doesn't compare the costs of hosting cricket. So, but saying all of that to say that it's every cricket committee meeting we're knocking heads. How can we get that demographic? Because that is where we're losing.
Well, before Santel comes back in, I'm glad you just made that point, because that was the obvious next question. Because I'm fairly certain people watching this will say, yeah, but what about doing what would be the equivalent in England? It's like the second 11. But
Correct.
Of course, like you say, the costs throughout the Caribbean are what they are.
I mean, to be fair to some of the territorial boards, they are strongly now looking at maybe bilateral games where, you know, Barbados will say to the Windwards, because they have St. Vincent right across the road. You know, they're saying, listen, we will play you in 3 under 23 games, you know, or host you for 3 4-day games, and then we can come to you for 5 ODIs. Guyana and Trinidad are exploring how they can do it, because if nothing else, what we have been able to do in the last, since I've been here, is to emphasize. I'm not going to say, listen, even before I came, people realized that there was this issue. So it's not, I haven't opened anybody's eyes to the issue. But what we have kept doing is we've kept impressing that if we don't get this right, if we don't get creative, if we don't try, you know, we won't make it. So we're encouraging territorial boards, be creative. It doesn't have to be that we all play each other. It could be just a bilateral. Anything that you can do that will keep a 19-year-old playing in a program just for 2 years. Take him up to 21. Take him up to 21, and if he doesn't cut it at 21, fine. But if you can just keep him for 2 more years, and the other thing the other recent issue is going back about maybe 10, 15 years, where we aligned our what we then call the under 19 program or under 19 tournament. We aligned it to the under 19 World Cup, which in effect made our tournament an under 18 tournament. So instead of leaving youth cricket at 19, so where they had that extra year under supervision, developing physically, technically, that gap opened up, because so now they're leaving youth cricket at 18, which is making it even harder to keep them in that period, 18 to say 22. So it became even more of a challenge and more important for us to try and find creative ways to make that happen. And we're still not there yet, obviously, but it is still high on the list of priorities, because we know that if we don't get an answer or solution to that, we're going to be butting our heads against the wall for a while.
Just a final one from me. Would you say, and you may not be able to answer this, you might have to say, you know what, that's too political. So I'm giving you.
If I have to say it, I'll say it. Don't worry.
Okay, I'm giving you the option to. I'm giving you the option to opt out. I'm just saying. But would you say then that, given what you've obviously been speaking about, did over the last 22 years, so since you left, did territories get lazy and just assume players were going to come through, or is it too simplistic to think of it to think of it that way? Did they just assume the production line would? So let's take Jamaica. Let's you and I just talk on Jamaica. Did the JCA just assume another Chris Gale would come, another Marlon Samuels would come, another Jerome Taylor would just keep coming, and nothing would need to change for that to happen?
Yeah, I think even long before that, I think that mindset has been a part of our cricket for a long time, and that was part of that era of denial that I was referring to, which I would say from about the late 90s until I would say as recently as maybe post 2010, maybe 2012, 2014, before the administration in the region started to dawn on them that something was wrong, and it wasn't, because they now had. I mean, let's. I remember having this conversation with a gentleman recently, and it was a real shock to him. Who's the last Barbadian batsman to average 14 Test cricket? Here's one for you.
I'm going to say it's got to be Haynes. Haynes? Would it be Haynes? I'm going to go Desmond Haynes.
Okay. So Desmond Haynes made his debut when? When are you born, Marshall?
Nah, I can't give away my government aid. but I'm gonna say that Haynes
like what? Desmond Haynes would have been like what, late 70s? 77, 78?
Desmond Haynes debuted in 1978. So Desmond Haynes learned his cricket. Whatever the system was, Desmond Haynes learned his cricket in the early to mid 70s. Now, don't look at when the person leaves the game. Look at when they enter the game. Right? So the last process, the last program, the last production line, if you have a production line to produce Mercedes-Benzes, right? I think that's how you pluralize it, Benzes. But the last production line that this famous little piece of land that is a cricket hotspot, known globally around the world as a cricket hotspot. The last production line or process that produced, and we're using 40 as a benchmark, that produced a batsman to average 40 in Test cricket was in the 70s. So that starts to give you a little bit of perspective, right? Jamaica, the last Jamaican batsman to average 40 is Chris Gale. Chris Gale debuted in 1999. Guyana, Sarwan. Sarwan debuted in 1999. Windwards never had one. Leewards, who's the last Leewards batsman to average 40?
Richie
Richardson. Richie started in 1983. Trinidad and Tobago, Brian Lara. Brian Lara started in 1989. Now, all I'm saying, I'm putting that out just to say that that sort of a conversation, with no malice, because it is global in the Caribbean sense, okay? It is out there for everybody to see, as in, gentlemen, ladies, whatever we're doing, all I was alluding to in the late 90s was what we're doing isn't working. It had to run for a little bit of time before everybody sort of came to the understanding that, do you know what? It's not working. And then people started to be a little bit more open to, you know, do we have to do something different, and maybe became more open to change, which I think is where we have been fairly recently, but we've got a lot of catching up to do, because for many years, as you alluded to, Marshall, there was a denial, it'll just happen without people understanding how things happen and Okay, fine. So we had an informal system for 50 years, 60 years. You know, you practice with world-class players, and then you go off and you refine yourself in England, and you're ready to go. And if you can throw in a little bit of World Series cricket and a Kerry Packer, then even better. You know. But once all of those doors close, and some of them are now closed forever, the onus was on what production capacity do you have totally? Because you're not bringing in parts from overseas now. This car is going to have to be built totally within our region. Nobody helping us now. And it took a while, I think, for us as a region to get there. But I think we're there. We've been there for a little while, you know, and we just have to keep building on that.
Now, I guess final point for me, and it's a big talking point. I noticed in the emerging players press release, there was an emphasis on players having to meet a minimum fitness requirement before they be accepted into the academy. And obviously, fitness is a big talking point at franchise level and West Indies level.
Yeah.
Do you think, in your opinion, is it a lack of formal education, or has this always been the case in West Indies cricket, a culture of lack of fitness standards, and it's only now being picked up, or is it a modern issue? How would you sort of explain the current fitness issues across the region?
I think that this is an opinion, okay? There's no empirical evidence, so don't ask me for numbers and formulas and all the rest of it. I think it's multidimensional, Santoki. First of all, if I'm using a high performance model, anyone, so whether it be informal from my time or formal from now. If you look at the informal model, when we looked at our heroes, we saw the fittest team in the world. So there were certain things that, you know, when a Lara, myself, a Keith Atherton, anybody from that era, Chanderpaul, got into a West Indies team as young men, because we had, you know, Chanderpaul would have seen Roger Harper practicing in Guyana. I would have watched Dujan and that kind of thing. Brian Lara would have. Well, Bishop started maybe about the same time, but he would have had Larry Gomes and so on in Queen's Park. We emulated what we saw. Now, remember that I would have broken the chain. So I didn't give to Kingston Cricket Club what Dujan gave me, because by the time I became an international player, I wasn't playing club cricket, I was playing in England, that kind of thing. So I'd maybe play a couple of games and then that's it, me for the season. So the kids who would have been at the club then wouldn't have had, quote unquote, world class to emulate. And we did not have a coaching structure at the time. So standards, fitness standards, not only fitness, but fitness standards decline over time. Okay? And you get to the point where part of the decline, one of the tangible aspects of the decline is also in this area, this key area of fitness. Now, you're talking about, among other things, education. And this is something that not just us, just any strategy to educate is easier when you get them young. Okay? So, not just me, it started before me, because the person who sat in my seat before, Richard Pybus, was also, you know, on a road to improving fitness standards and trying to get the standards institutionalized. And that is a challenge, because you have to educate not just the players, you have to educate administrators, because as soon as a player comes out of his comfort zone, he runs to his administration, he runs to his local power broker and says, I am not comfortable, help me. And then you will go to a board meeting and they will think that they're helping the player by trying to accept a substandard level in anything. And so you have to go through the whole education process. And part of it is political as well. Anything with people is political, as you're aware. So it has had its challenges. It still does to a certain degree, but the road is getting a lot smoother than it used to be. So even before me, if you talk to Richard Pybus, he can tell you how bumpy that road was when he came. I inherited some, but as time has gone on, and we have been able to educate and strategize and you know, remain consistent to these strategies. The bumps are beginning to smoothen out a little bit, and we're seeing results. We're seeing improvement, measurable improvement, and something as this is going to sound it's going to sound interesting given that it's 2022, but one of the big sign-offs from the board in 2022 has been to get full-time fitness coaches employed to the territorial boards. Now, you said to yourself, but what? 2022? Like, this is something that counties had in place from 1998. Exactly. You know what I mean? So it's something, it's education, right? And I don't want to, a lot of times you can get emotional because you lose sight of the fact that people know what they know. And really and truly, what you want to sustain anything is first to get people to know why. And then they will back you because they understand the why. But that takes time, you know, and so we've had to go through a whole process of educating, and we still are educating the region, not just the players, the administrators, and even the coaches themselves. Everybody will say, well, yes, fitness is thing, but right, but how do you as a coach incorporate that into your program if you've never done it before? That's simple. Well, I shouldn't say simple, but stuff like that. So it has very wide educational implications, and for people who are in that industry of education, they realize that it's not an overnight thing. It takes time.
You do realize though that it must baffle you. I mean, obviously the region is the region, and we have our own ways. We have our own way within the Caribbean of how we are with things. But it must baffle you to see other so-called, let's call them first world cricketing nations, and what they take as basics, and we're having conversations about fitness. Like, we're having conversations.
No, not really, no, because I tell you something, you know, when I went to Kent in 2012, Kent as a county were in that transition period. So I'll give you some funny stories about Rob Key as captain versus like the kids in the academy who were coming through as youngsters being educated in this particular area. I mean, I look back now and I laugh, but you're sitting in the middle of change, the changing of an era, the changing of a mindset, because English cricket now was saying this is the type of cricket that we want, and they were beginning to draw the line. So you had players who were talented, but they were going to always fall outside of the English system because in this one area, they preferred to keep the old mindset. And I lived and worked through that period, and it was interesting. But I learned some lessons that I've sort of tried to bring into this particular, because it's the same thing. You're managing change, changing mindsets, changing cultures, and it takes time, and it takes planning, and there are times when it takes holding the line, because you know that you have to hold a line. It's part and parcel, and there are people who will be outside of the comfort zone, but that's just part of it. I don't sit down and you would wish not to go through it. You wish it would happen yesterday, but I keep coming back to anything that involves educating or re-educating or realigning mindsets is going to take time, because mindsets are not that easily changed. People want to stay comfortable with what they know and what they're comfortable with and all the rest of it. So it's a challenge, but we always knew it was going to be there.
I can't argue against that answer. Listen, Jimmy, we told you before we press record that this was going to be a quick half-hour, 35-minute thing, but I knew it. You know, I knew it. As soon as I got you on, I knew it was going to happen. But Santoki, let's let Jimmy go, but with a few of the. Oh, sorry, keep muting myself. With a few of the random questions that people sent in. So, Jimmy, I'm just going to shoot off with one. Then Santoki will follow.
All right.
granted, we got you on for a specific topic, so I'll try to keep it generally related to it. So I'm going to give you this one, which came from. Actually, I can't even. A lot of people asked a question which kind of fit around this topic.
Yeah.
So obviously, IPL goes on now 2 months of the year, possibly now 2.5 months, probably one day the whole cricket calendar. But has it ever occurred to Cricket West Indies, or in your role as director of cricket, to maybe run? Well, no, we tend to, obviously COVID has messed everything up. So we tend to run, or we used to run parts of the 4-day comp during IPL with the players who weren't there. But has it ever crossed Cricket West Indies' mind to like do, whether it be A-team tours for players who aren't involved in that? Or do you see maybe the cricket calendar going away where international teams say, you know what, now's the perfect time to do an A-team tour when all of the franchise players are away? Or is that just financially not viable?
No. While IPL will not be a window at this point in time, based on the agreement we have with our international players. So while IPL will not clash with international fixtures, as in the senior team, it is definitely a window to explore other tours and tournaments. As in, if you say you have 10 players in IPL who are, let's say, white ball specific players, why couldn't we have an A tour or an under-19 tour? Or did you see what I'm saying? It is still a window where cricket at the level below international level can be played. So it is definitely something that we consider and we have considered before and will continue to look at as a window for non-international cricket, then put it that way.
No problem. Santoki.
Yeah, and Chatil on Twitter asked, what are the plans for A-team tours resuming?
Okay, so we are going to have A-team cricket in August, July 30th. August against Bangladesh. And what we're looking to fill out, and we're almost there, is a calendar that has a minimum of 2 A-team tours per year. So again, looking at the development pyramid, we see A-team cricket as critical to bridging that gap between where our first-class cricket is at the minute and international cricket. So yes, we have moved from my time of playing 5 first-class games to now pre-COVID, we played 10, 5 games home and away. So the lads are getting 10 first-class games, but we feel in terms of standards and development, we needed to try and find that filler between that level and international level. And A-team cricket is perfect for that. So we're looking at filling out our calendar for the next 5 years with a minimum of 2 A-team tours per year.
And then finally from me, I'm sure it was in the press release, but just for clarification for those who will listen to this and then shout at us if we don't answer the question, the players who are part of the initial academy, so the first 15, will they be fielded in Super 50?
Yes.
As an emerging team?
Correct. We did that in 2019 successfully.
Right, exactly.
Well, some people measure success differently because they say if the emerging team wins it, then it's a sad indictment on the rest of the teams in the big men, so to speak, in the competition. But no, we did it in 2019, and we thought it was a really good experience for the lads. A lot of them have grown through it. The silver came out of that tournament as one of the standouts. So we and if you look at a development model, gents, you teach, you prepare, and then you put them under the pressure of competition. So we had to have. We're not just looking at the Super 50. We setting up bilateral series for them as well, so that they can play similar competition both home and away as well.
Did you not consider? I've often said we should do this, but again, it's probably a financial decision. Have you ever thought about doing an emerging team in the first class season? Or is that just too much? I mean, where would you base them? I guess in Antigua, but has that ever been considered?
Well, if you're playing back-to-back games, you could just have them play all away games. And then when you have the break, like the 10-day break, send them home, and then reassemble, and everybody you play all the way. That is going to be seriously looked at for 2024. So we're going to get through 22, 23 with just Super 50. But that model now is going to come. It is going to involve the renegotiation of the MOU between the board, the territorial boards, and WIPA to see. The question that is being asked now is a 10-game franchise model fit for purpose? And if not, how do you tweak, juggle, play around with the first class model? And if you, in that tweaking, is there a role for an emerging team? So those are some of the questions that, I mean, those thoughts have been sort of on a table being discussed at different levels now for, I would say, almost a year. But yes, to answer your question, it is being discussed.
Yeah, and then Santoki, I'll let you have the final question, but I'm going to throw an idea into your head, Jimmy, whilst I've got the chance. I actually think COVID obviously has disrupted a lot in the Caribbean, but it's also probably taught us a few lessons. And I actually wonder if going forward, it doesn't make any more sense now to do home and away in the franchise season, because if you can hold it in 2 or 3 countries and reduce costs, why would you bother going home and away anymore?
Well, I would argue that strongly from a development point of view, in terms of a player's development, the learning how to travel, learning how to adapt to different conditions in the different territories. So over the course of a season, you're going to play 5 games at home where should, versus 5 games in conditions in front of crowd. Well, I got carried away there. But I hear you. Nobody watching 4-day cricket these days. I don't know where that thought came into my head from. But you understand what I'm saying? So in terms of player development, right? We just had a tournament in Trinidad. Now listen, if I was a batsman, I would have bitten off your right arm to play in that tournament, because the 3 surfaces that were being used, Diego Martin, Queen's Park, and Brian Lara, were as flat as, when I say flat, proper flat. Yeah. However, development is not about, yes, I understand from a financial point of view, you got to want it, cost, you save, all of that. Yep, I get that. But from a player development point of view, you need players who as early as possible, understand what it is to go and make a plan for a surface that they don't know, they've never seen. How am I going to approach it? So there are development issues that I would be championing, to the point where I would say, please don't necessarily make going to one territory the be all and end all, because that is going to affect their development long term. I hear you. Santoki, I'll let you finish.
Final question from Sumit on Twitter. He said, how do you feel at the sight of empty grounds in the Caribbean for test matches? And have Cricket West Indies given up on increasing these attendances?
No, not really. I think part of it we're trying to address in the short, medium, and long term, which is to get better results. Okay. However, I will caveat that by saying, if you take out the Ashes, if you take out test matches in England and some in Australia, where are the big test match crowds? Where are they? I don't see them. No, in other words, what I'm saying is, are we talking about a Caribbean problem? Because I could see, I could envision a stronger team, and you're still struggling to get Caribbean people to say they're going to sit down for a day and watch a game that doesn't have a result in that day, which is not necessarily a Caribbean issue. That is an answer that cricket is trying to find all over the world, because the sort of, what would I say, the utopia for cricket is that everybody has been looking for 50 years, is how can you make first-class cricket self-sufficient rather than having to depend on subsidies from international cricket. And if you don't get people through the gate, or you don't have a medium by which you can sell 4-day cricket or 5-day cricket. Okay, now 5-day cricket still sells internationally, as in you get TV rights. So there are people, all right, India, you might not get a full crowd watching any test match, but you have 1 billion eyes on the television watching. So somebody's watching it. You understand what I'm saying? Now, whether that means that we need to change the whole mindset of what is good and what is successful. Because if you tell me that St. Lucia, they're playing the test match against Bangladesh in St. Lucia, and I don't know, maybe 100 people in the crowd, barring TV and media and stuff like that. Maybe 100 people, 200 people in the crowd, if that. Right, okay. But if you told me that across the Caribbean, with 6 million people, you have 4 million eyes on televisions, I'm going to tell you, listen, whatever you're doing, don't stop doing it. Because back in the day, the reverse is what you'd get. You'd get 15,000 people cramming the Darren Sammy Stadium, but you only have 10 people watching it on TV. So the money you're getting is only the tickets that's selling at $15 at the stadium times 10,000, versus if you can get 4 million people in the Caribbean plus another 150 million on the subcontinent, you can monetize that a lot better. These are some of the issues. You understand what I'm saying? So to answer the question, we are trying to do the best we can through, you have the whole fan engagement thing. But I think the bottom line is you need a stronger team, right? People want to come see quality, and we haven't been delivering quality for a long time. So improve the quality and see where that gets you. My gut feel, though, is that no matter if we start playing like Australia tomorrow, in St. Lucia, you're still not going to get the Darren Sammy Stadium full. But you might get a lot more people digitally and on different platforms following the team. And then you can cash in however you want to cash it. But yeah, that's an ongoing challenge, Santoki, which in my little corner of the world, I am just saying, Jimmy, try and get better quality, and then let the marketing people see what they can do.
Listen, people, we waited over a year to pin down Jimmy Adams to come on this podcast. But I'll tell you something, that year was very much worth the wait. Jimmy, I'm not even joking, we could go on for another hour, 2 hours just chatting about everything to do with West Indies cricket. But I just want to say how grateful Santoki and I are that you came through, and everybody who goes on to watch this episode, I'm fairly certain, will be commenting in the comments below or on Twitter, or whatever it is they comment, that what an insightful episode this was. Santoki, any words from you?
Yeah, no, completely engaging, highly educative conversation, and yeah, as Mash said, we're massively appreciative of you giving up your Sunday evening to join us and talk about cricket.
Well, thank you for the invitation. First of all, I mean, there are a lot of things that we want to put out there, and your medium certainly will help us to do that. I do believe that the whole relationship between media and media platforms like yourself and sport is symbiotic, right? And we really appreciate what you're doing. I see where this particular product is gaining more and more popularity, and let me wish you all the success going forward with this particular platform. And yeah, let's do it again sometimes. It was good fun,
Most definitely. But we're going to do a part 2, Jimmy, and that one's just going to focus on your career. Nothing to do with
that. Now going to take 10 minutes. That now take. Listen, you're going to lose customers with that one. We can't tell you that.
Listen, you and I both know.
Your marketing department not going to support that one at all. You're
underselling yourself. You had some serious moments in your career.
But anyway, anytime. It's good fun. And yeah, man. But good luck with the program, and hopefully it keeps going from strength to strength.
No problem, ladies and gentlemen. That's been Cricket West Indies Director of Cricket, Jimmy Adams. We hope you've enjoyed that one. And as ever, that's been another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.